One day I'll be able to stop making rant videos like this. One day people will learn to stop focusing on such inconsequential things and stirring the internet into an uproar because of it, and one day the internet will be wise enough and smart enough to not cause said uproar in the first place because of how it reflects on us as a community. One day I'll also be standing up on the stage of E3 and presenting to a largely wanting public the latest entry from Team Pizza Productions. It's something I know is gonna happen someday, but I know it ain't gonna happen anytime soon.
So Ben Gilbert of Business Insider posted an article recently about how he was invited by Nintendo to come play Super Mario Maker before it was released. However, he noticed something he thought was unusual about the game. When you place an item or object on the screen, your stylus is represented by a Caucasian woman's hand holding your chosen asset in place. He then wondered if the gender or race of the hand could be changed. They told him it couldn't. When Ben returned home, he decided to make this a focal point of his article on the game, discussing why he was surprised that an industry giant like Nintendo wouldn't think to be inclusive on the matter of player representation, and in a game featuring their most famous character, no less. Unsurprisingly, the internet's reaction to this article was, harsh, to say the least. It was making the rounds on Reddit all day. The story itself is currently sitting at a whopping 171 comments, most of which are negative, and we've got everyone from GameSpot to Alpha Omega Sin expressing their opinions on the matter, and the general consensus is that Ben is making a mountain out of a molehill. However, I've noticed that a lot of the videos, blogs, and what have you sport a tone that's, I don't want to say insensitive, but overall dismissive, to the point where you would be forgiven for believing that we as a community think the concept of sex and race representation in games isn't worth talking about, and I'm not 100% convinced of that. So let's give Mr. Gilbert the benefit of the doubt, and assume this article wasn't just written as clickbait. Let's analyze his argument from a developer's perspective and see if it holds any weight. First off, let's not bring the man's qualifications into question. Yeah, he's got over half a decade of journalistic experience and he's been a gamer the whole time. Besides, trying to disprove him as a source instead of analyzing his side of the story just makes us look like digital homicide, and I'd like to think my community is better than that. Instead, let's frame this in a more game-centric way. What if Ben wasn't a writer for Business Insider, and instead was a tester brought on during the quality assurance period of development? This doesn't change the fact that you'd be open to the feedback, but it does mean you'd have to break it apart to find out what the real issue was. For example, if someone tells you your levels are too short, it might be an indicator that they breezed through them too easily, or just didn't care about the collectibles scattered about them. Seriously, go play Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze again and don't stop for any secrets or Kong letters. You'd be amazed how quickly you fly through those stages. And that is if you don't get murdered by enemies first. But that's why Tropical Freeze is a good platformer. You usually stop for those secrets because you have a reason to want them. You know picking them up means more levels, which in the long run means more fun. And the difficulty, from your low amount of health to how far the camera is zoomed out from you, to the enemy placement and design, are all crafted to make you pause, judge the danger ahead, and then deal with it, instead of just flying through without a care. This is the power of that kind of careful insight to your feedback. Ben's concern is that Nintendo is one of the big three. They're a huge part of the collective image that the general public perceives of the medium. So if they release a Mario game that makes some individuals feel uncomfortable because they feel marginalized, how does that reflect on the rest of us? And I'd be right there with him if Mario Maker was the type of game where who you were actually mattered. It's interesting that we come into this directly off last week's discussion on character design. In a game like Mass Effect or Star Ocean, player representation is very important because, by the very definition of the genre, those are games where you play a role. Their core appeal is the types of stories and individuals you get to experience, which is why you have to make a very careful decision on whether you let the player be whoever they want or you just fill in the blanks for them. Last I checked, though, Mario Maker is not an RPG. As the story goes, the game was born as an in-house tool set that Nintendo R&D developed to help make future Mario games easier to build. As the toolset became more advanced, though, they had the idea to give it to players so they could enjoy it as well. One of my favorite moments from Nintendo's E3 showcase this year was when Shigeru Miyamoto was going over his old blueprints for the original Super Mario Bros. He reminisced about how much he enjoyed working on that game, and expressed how, with Super Mario Maker, a lot of people might be able to feel that same joy he did of building something. This is a game whose modus operandi is to prove that anyone can be a developer. But, as anyone who's been in that field will tell you, being a good developer requires a bit more effort. It means you have to have an eye for good design, a mechanical knowledge of human psychology, and a thorough understanding of how your mechanics and engine operate. It's something that demands a willingness to learn, both from others and from your own endeavors, be they successes or failures. It's about being secure and open-minded enough to take criticism on the nose when it comes your way. But you know what it has nothing to do with? Race and gender. I understand where you're coming from, Ben, I just don't agree. And in my opinion, saying Super Mario Maker is a lesser game because it doesn't take your personal biases into account is completely missing the point. I say let your creations speak for themselves.
So, Drawman, as someone who can claim proud ownership of a non-Caucasian penis, are you offended by the hand in Super Mario Maker?
Not really.
Why not?
Because it's Mario!
There you have it.